Marcus Reid stood in the break room at 3 in the morning, staring at the half-empty coffee pot like it held answers to questions he was too exhausted to ask. His hands trembled as he poured the bitter liquid into a chipped mug, not from caffeine withdrawal but from the bone-deep fatigue of a man who hadn't slept more than 4 hours straight in 6 years. His daughter Lily had woken up screaming again, another nightmare about the mother who left them when she was just 2 years old. He'd held her until she fell back asleep, singing the lullaby his own mother used to sing to him, then dragged himself to the office for the early shift because someone had to keep the lights on and food on the table. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps, and Marcus wondered for the 1,000th time if he was doing enough, being enough, surviving enough for the little girl who depended on him for everything. If you believe in second chances, in the power of kindness, and in stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles, please hit that like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world, and it helps us bring more heartfelt stories to people who need them. Marcus had worked at Hartwell Marketing for 4 years, climbing from junior copywriter to senior creative director through sheer determination and countless sleepless nights spent refining campaigns after Lily finally dozed off. His colleagues saw him as the quiet guy who never attended happy hours or office parties, who declined every invitation with a polite smile and a vague excuse. What they didn't see were the parent-teacher conferences he rushed to between meetings, the science projects assembled at midnight, the birthday parties he threw for one with homemade cake and decorations from the dollar store. They didn't know about the superhero costumes he sewed by hand because Lily wanted to be a character that didn't exist in stores, or the tears he cried in the shower when the weight of doing it all alone threatened to crush him. The worst part wasn't the exhaustion or the financial strain of daycare and babysitters. The worst part was the loneliness that wrapped around him like a heavy blanket, suffocating and inescapable. Marcus had forgotten what it felt like to be touched with tenderness, to share a laugh over something meaningless, to have another adult ask how his day went and actually care about the answer. His coworkers had started a running joke about his non-existent love life, teasing him mercilessly whenever the CEO, Vanessa Chen, walked past his desk. They'd nudge him and whisper crude suggestions about making a move on the boss, daring him to ask her out, to seduce her, to do something other than exist in his bubble of responsibility and sacrifice. Marcus always brushed off their comments with a shake of his head because the very idea was absurd. Vanessa Chen was untouchable, a brilliant entrepreneur who'd built Hartwell Marketing from nothing into a powerhouse agency. She was sharp as broken glass, beautiful in a way that seemed almost intentional, with dark eyes that could read a room in seconds and a mind that worked 3 steps ahead of everyone else. She wore power suits like armor and commanded respect without ever raising her voice. More importantly, she was his boss, and Marcus had exactly zero interest in complicating the one stable thing in his chaotic life with romantic fantasies that would never materialize. What Marcus didn't know was that Vanessa Chen noticed everything. She noticed how he arrived before everyone else and stayed late, working through lunch to make up for the mornings when Lily's school called and he had to leave. She noticed the photos on his desk of a gap-toothed girl with wild curls and her father's warm brown eyes. She noticed how he never complained, never made excuses, just quietly delivered exceptional work while carrying the weight of single parenthood like it was just another item on his to-do list. She noticed the sadness that flickered across his face when the office buzzed about weekend plans and romantic getaways, the way he seemed to exist in a separate reality from everyone else. Vanessa had her own secrets, her own scars from a marriage that imploded under the pressure of building an empire. She understood loneliness, understood the choice between career and connection, understood what it meant to build walls so high that nobody could climb them. But watching Marcus, seeing his quiet strength and fierce devotion to his daughter, something had shifted inside her. She found herself thinking about him at odd moments, wondering what it would be like to share the burden with someone who understood sacrifice, who knew that love sometimes meant putting someone else first even when you were running on empty. The annual company retreat arrived in early autumn, a mandatory weekend at a lakeside resort designed for team bonding and strategic planning. Marcus had almost skipped it, but his mother had insisted on watching Lily, telling him he needed to take care of himself, too. The first night, after too many drinks and too much laughter, his coworkers cornered him by the bonfire and started in on their usual teasing. But this time, emboldened by alcohol and mob mentality, they turned it into a dare. Sleep with Vanessa Chen, they challenged, like she was a conquest rather than a human being, like his desperation for connection was entertainment for their amusement. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, hot and sharp. He was about to tell them exactly where they could shove their dare when Vanessa's voice cut through the night air like a blade. She'd been standing in the shadows, had heard everything, and now she stepped into the firelight with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. The group fell silent, faces flushing with embarrassment and fear as they realized their boss had heard their crude joke. Marcus wanted the earth to swallow him whole. But then Vanessa looked directly at Marcus and something passed between them, a recognition of shared loneliness and longing. Her lips curved into a small smile, and she said 4 words that would change everything. About time, she said, her voice soft but clear, meant only for him even though everyone could hear. The bonfire crackled and popped as Marcus tried to process what he'd just heard. Vanessa turned and walked toward her cabin, then paused and glanced back over her shoulder, her eyes meeting his with an invitation that was both terrifying and thrilling. The crowd around him erupted in shocked whispers, but Marcus barely heard them. All he could think about was the way she'd looked at him, like he was someone worth knowing, worth choosing, worth the risk. He found himself walking toward her cabin, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. When she opened the door, they didn't fall into bed like the crude dare had suggested. Instead, they talked. They sat on her porch overlooking the dark lake and talked about everything, the words spilling out like they'd been dammed up for years. Vanessa told him about her divorce, about the crushing pressure of being a woman in charge, about the assumption that success meant she didn't need tenderness or companionship. Marcus told her about Lily, about the nights he cried from exhaustion, about the fear that he was failing his daughter by not being enough. As dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Vanessa reached over and took his hand. The touch was electric, not with passion but with the simple human need for connection. She told him she'd been watching him for months, admiring his strength, his dedication, the way he loved his daughter with every fiber of his being. She said she'd been waiting for him to see her not as a boss but as a woman who was just as lonely, just as tired of doing everything alone. If this story has touched your heart, if you've ever felt the weight of doing it all alone or the hope that maybe you don't have to, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your engagement helps stories like this reach people who need them most. Before we finish, drop a comment below telling us, do you believe that sometimes the people meant for us are closer than we think? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Marcus and Vanessa didn't rush into anything, didn't let a dare define what they could become to each other. They took it slow, building something real on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Vanessa met Lily 3 months later, showing up at their apartment with art supplies and patience, winning over the little girl not by trying to replace her mother, but by showing up as herself, flaws and all. Lily drew pictures of the 3 of them together, a ready-made family that didn't fit any traditional mold but worked because they chose each other every single day. A year later, Marcus still arrived early at the office, but now it was because Vanessa was there too, and they'd steal a few quiet minutes together before the chaos of the day began. His coworkers never made crude jokes again, not after seeing the way their boss and their colleague built something beautiful from honesty and vulnerability. They'd learned that real connection isn't a conquest or a dare, but a choice to be brave enough to be seen, to be known, to admit that nobody should have to carry everything alone. On their wedding day, with Lily as flower girl in a dress she'd designed herself, Marcus thought about that night by the bonfire when everything changed. The dare had been meant to humiliate him, to reduce his loneliness to a punchline. But Vanessa had heard it and responded with grace, with her own courage, with those 4 perfect words that became their beginning. About time, she'd said, and she was right. It was about time that Marcus let someone share his load, about time he believed he deserved love, about time he understood that being enough didn't mean being alone. And as he kissed his wife while their daughter cheered and their found family celebrated, Marcus finally felt what he'd been missing for so long. He felt whole,